When I asked my daughter what time the engagement dinner was, she took a breath so deep I felt the temperature change through the phone and said, "Oh, we had it yesterday." You think that's the storm? That's just the first cloud. Midway through this tale, you'll watch her stand in front of 50 people with a bouquet in one hand and a dog-eared receipt in the other, mascara running, reading words I wrote before she was born. She will learn that love can be quiet without being absent. And she'll finally ask me to walk her down the second half of the aisle. I am 69 years old and my name is Lita, short for Alida, a farm kitchen name that smells like rye bread and wood smoke. I have a sweater for every season and a calendar in my head. I raised my daughter, Vera, on the wages I pinched at the fabric store and the hours I stole back from exhaustion. For decades, I was a dependable shadow with a needle between my fingers and 3 lists going at once. Things we needed, things we could afford, and things I'd make happen anyway. On the morning of the phone call, I was in my kitchen, a room that whistles slightly when the wind gets curious, holding a new paper sack of sugar. It split along the seam and spilled across the tile like white rain. The sound it made, soft, polite, embarrassed, felt like the opposite of what my heart was doing. "You had it yesterday," I repeated. Calm is a muscle, and mine can lift furniture. There wasn't enough space. Vera's voice was even, but the edges glittered. "And I didn't think you'd want to come. Your engagement dinner?" I used the same voice I used when I asked doctors questions. It is a voice that doesn't tremble even if my wrists do. "It's not about a dinner, Mama." The word mama came out thin, stretched by something sharp. "It's about everything. You were never really there." I looked at the sugar pooling under chair legs and sluicing into the darkness beneath the stove. I thought about the mornings I'd tied her shoes with a coffee cup cooling on the windowsill. I thought about hemming a choir dress at 2 a.m. I thought about the envelope of cash taped beneath the sink for emergencies and the time, when she was 13 and fevered, that I broke my promise never to miss a shift, called in anyway, and sat next to her bed while cartoons murmured her back to sleep. "How many people were there?" I asked. "You learn the shape of a lie by counting chairs." "Just a few," she said. "Don't make this a thing." "That you got engaged?" My calm had a tear right down the front of it like a snagged cardigan. "That I never felt loved," she said, and there it was, unsheathed and shining. "You gave me things, yes. But not love. Not the kind that counts." When we hung up, the kitchen felt like a scene that had been waiting politely for the actors to leave so it could collapse. A sparrow tapped the window like it mistook the glass for sky. I knelt with a broom and swept the sugar into small mountains, then slid a cookie sheet beneath the refrigerator to catch what I couldn't reach. The smallness steadied me. It always has. Then I decided to teach my daughter a lesson. Not a punishment. Not revenge that curdles the milk in your tea. A lesson. The kind where the teacher turns the garment inside out so you can see the stitching that holds it together. You want it spoiled? Fine. Midway through this story, Vera will read a letter I wrote to her sleeping, tooth fairy-age self. A rival mother will try to clap over us. A man I once tried to forget will appear with a shadow of an apology. A thunderstorm will aim itself at our new beginning and miss, because we have learned to put roofs on things. But first, the confrontation. The next day, I took the bus to her new building, a place with brushed steel mailboxes and a lobby that smells like eucalyptus and optimism. Mark, her fiancé, opened the door in a t-shirt with an avocado lifting tiny cartoon weights. "Lita," he said, raw kindness scrawled across his face. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" I asked, stepping past him. "Because I heard it wasn't so good to see me yesterday." Vera came into the living room with a mug held in both hands. She has my hairline and her father's eyebrows, and when she's bracing for weather, she puts her hair up in a no-nonsense knot, as if height is armor. "Mama," she said, soft but unsurrendered. "I told you." "I came to listen," I said, and sat on the edge of her expensive, ghost of a spill white couch. "Not just to defend myself. But if you're going to accuse me of not loving you, we're going to say the names of the hard things out loud." Mark made a polite attempt at disappearing. "I can take a walk," he offered. "Stay," I told him. "You're family. Or I suppose I am not. Someone might as well be here to gather evidence." He stayed. "You were always working," Vera said. The words shivered like they'd been held too long. Recitals meets my 8th grade poetry thing. I looked for you, and you weren't there. Everyone else's mother brought flowers and took pictures. Mine was apologizing to the manager for an extra shift. You love taking care of me in theory, not me. I let it hurt. I thought of that poetry night, the sweaty cafeteria, the metal chairs that screamed when you moved them. I had a double shift. I had arranged for our neighbor, Mrs. Cormack, to sit in the audience and cheer at the right places. I had sewn a ribbon into her dress the weekend before. I had made a casserole so dinner would exist. I had decided to miss in advance so I could keep the lights on. Does love only count when it is clapped for? The night you read that poem, I hemmed until 3 a.m., I said. When you were 10, I sold my mother's locket to pay for your summer camp because you had not yet seen a lake close enough to understand it. Love doesn't always come with a program and a start time. You can't just call survival love, she said. Why not? I asked, finally letting the edge show. Survival is the first shape love takes. If I didn't keep the roof on, what would you have been under the rain? Mark, quiet until then, folded a napkin with surgical precision. Maybe you're both holding a corner of the same truth, he said carefully. Maybe there was love. And maybe there were empty chairs. Maybe both things can be true. I looked at him with something like gratitude. He was a bridge that didn't demand tolls. I'm going to do something, I said, standing. If you call it a spectacle, I'll remind you I've made exactly 0 spectacles in my life. I'm going to show you what I look like when I love. Vera watched me like a cat at a closed door. What does that mean? It means I'll see you Sunday. Bring honesty and the courage to be wrong. She almost smiled. Then she didn't. Sunday, she said, and lifted her chin like a shield. On the bus home, I made a list. Names, neighbors, teachers, bosses, the baker who once saved a box of leftover cupcakes for our class party, the doctor who studied her asthma, the coach whose registration fee I hid by scrubbing the gym in the evenings. Places. The fabric store back room where the metal fan rattled, the church basement sale where quarters added up like patience, the second-hand bookshop where I rested in the aisle because the chair squeaked like a mouse. Dates, recital, swim meet, the poetry night. And then I wrote a plan. The plan took 3 days and every ounce of nerve I had. First, I called my old manager at the fabric store. Rita, I said, do you still have the box of orphan receipts and returns? My little archive? Of course, she cackled. Why? I'm building a paper palace, I said. Second, I pulled down the boxes marked with duct tape and handwriting, taxes, school, rent. Inside were things I'd never intended Vera to see. The notice from the electric company, the payment plan for braces, handwritten budgets where the math was half numbers and half prayer. Unbeautiful things. But scaffolding is not supposed to be beautiful, it is supposed to hold. Third, I visited 88-year-old Mrs. Cormack, who starts sentences in one century and finishes them in another. She answered the door in a dress I altered in 1999 and blinked like we were still 2 younger women on a stoop. I need a favor, I said. Does it require a hat? She asked. It would certainly not mind one. I booked the church basement for Sunday afternoon, neutral ground with bad chairs and good coffee. I invited everyone from my list who still picked up when I called. I told them, I am not asking you to defend me. I am asking you to tell the truth of what you witnessed. If that truth includes my absences, speak them. But also tell the other truth, the unphotogenic one, rides before dawn, checkups at noon, hemming at midnight. Bring artifacts if you have them. Bring your memory. Bring your hats. Sunday arrived smelling like rain that couldn't decide. I set a long table with a clean white cloth, then laid out my archive like a museum of domestic archaeology. A violin receipt with pencil notes, utility bills with dates circled, a folded note from me to a 12-year-old girl reminding her to take the green umbrella and the leftover lasagna. People trickled in. The baker, the youth pastor, the school nurse, a man whose jacket I patched for free and who never forgot, 3 of Vera's old classmates now grown with their own small emergencies. Mark arrived with ice and peonies. I thought both might be needed, he said, and I nearly put my head on his shoulder. Vera came late, because arriving late is a way of saying the world can wait on you and sometimes it needs to. She looked at the table, then at me. What is this? An audit, I said. Not of me. Of love. We began with my confession. I miss things, I said, hands open. I can name them. I can show you the math that did the choosing. You can be angry at me for making those trades. Your anger will be true. But it is not the only truth, and today is for gathering the rest. I handed her the umbrella and lasagna note. She unfolded. Read. Folded. Unfolded. Like she was trying to make it fit the size of her memory. The youth pastor stood and told the story of the broken-down family and the gas money I pressed into his hand from the church basement sale. The baker remembered me timing our arrival, so we caught the day-olds at their softest. The school nurse told them I pinched the inside of my own arm while they inserted Vera's so I wouldn't cry. No show, she said. Just the small pain a mother can choose so the world won't see the bigger one. A teacher on video said, "We wished you could have attended more of the public triumphs, Lita. But your attendance record in the unposted moments was immaculate." The stories weren't all flattering. Someone recalled the night I arrived late, the steps, the cold, the swelling embarrassment. I didn't excuse it. I dated it. I told them about the bus that didn't come and the second bus that broke. I told them I would have hitchhiked if anyone had been driving that road. Halfway through, I lifted a particular slip from the table. The violin, used, minor scratches, $68. On the white space beneath the logo, a pencil note from 19 years ago. She only asked once. We'll figure out groceries later. Love is countable and also not. Why did you write on it? Vera asked, bewildered. So I would remember who I was when I chose, I said. Her shoulders trembled like a tuning fork. Then came the letters. I opened the box from under my bed. I had written them after she fell asleep, so she would never have to carry my love like a debt. I handed her the top one, the tooth fairy night, the red pajamas, the door of first loss. She read. The basement held its breath. Somewhere upstairs a door clicked like a punctuation mark. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't need to, I said, and finally my voice cracked. You needed to be free. But between free and unseeing, something got lost. She came to the table and lifted an envelope addressed in her 12-year-old hand, to future me, open when you get engaged. She slid it open and read herself requesting blue shoes, a cake without raisins, and a dance with her mother. She laughed and cried at the same time, which is the sound forgiveness sometimes makes when it arrives early and late. I forgot my own letter, she said. I nodded. Then let's remember it together. We clapped. We cried. We drank bad coffee that tasted like courage. And, because I am very good at homework, I pulled out a basket of index cards. If love has been practical, our repair should be too, I said. 1 month. 4 tasks. Each of us will do 2 of the other's kind. I'll sit in the front row of your public life. You'll sit with me in the waiting rooms of mine. You'll help me clean the hall closet. I'll go dress shopping and pretend to like the wrong ones. We'll both dance in the kitchen. We'll both put in hours where nobody claps. She smiled through tears. You made homework for love. I like an actionable plan. We started that week. Tuesday, her office presentation. I sat with Mark in a wheeled chair that tried to escape every time I shifted. She was excellent, bright, prepared, a little too fast at the beginning, steady by the end. Wednesday, my clinic appointment. She brought a book, and when the doctor used a word I didn't like the taste of, she asked for a simpler one. Thursday, cabbage rolls, the recipe card stained on purpose. Saturday, the fabric district, the sky breaking open into rain. We laughed like dry bread meets butter. We were doing fine, better than fine, when the other mother arrived. I met Mark's mother, Ivana, at the dress shop. She was the kind of woman who wears perfume like a warning and calls affection theatrics unless she's the one performing it. She stepped into the fitting room area with a purse that could fund a small nation. You must be Vera's mother, she said, looking at me the way people look at throne rooms on tours, interested, but not enough to kneel. We missed you at the first dinner. The first? I asked. The one my sister hosted, she said. Much more intimate. We thought, given the situation, it best to keep things simple. What situation? I asked, as evenly as a pinned hem. Her smile sharpened. Vera doesn't like to be embarrassed. Neither do I. Later, over tea, I asked Vera flat out whether Ivana had suggested I be left off the list. The answer took its time. She thought it might be awkward, she said. She said you can be intense. Intense is a dull word for sacrifice, I said. Did you agree? I didn't disagree, she said, and the truth slid between us like a thin blade. I didn't call Ivana names. I made notes. I added a new card to the homework basket. Meet with the other mother. Listen. Set your borders. We met at a cafe where the spoons were heavier than the cups. Ivana ordered something with foam. I asked for hot water and a lemon. You have a beautiful son, I said. A good one. Thank you, she said, a weapon wrapped in lace. You also have influence, I said. Please use it for building, not excluding. She blinked. Vera told you. She told me enough, I said. I can tolerate being disliked for my own failures. I will not tolerate being dismissed for your comfort. She tilted her head. You're very proud of how hard you worked. No, I said. I'm proud of what it built. She considered me as if I were a seam that might give way. I will not compete for motherhood, she said at last. Good, I said. I won't either. There's no podium in love. There's only a long table and enough chairs if we buy folding ones. A week later, at the cake tasting, she handed me a piece of cardamom sponge with a smile that contained fewer knives. It was not friendship. It was an armistice signed on buttercream. I'll take it. The month unfolded into something that felt like new muscle. Vera and I spoke aloud the things we'd once swallowed. She confessed she had curated an online version of our life where the edges didn't show, and then resented me for giving her such unphotogenic material. I confessed I had hidden my feelings because I was afraid they'd turn into guilt in her hands. We both learned to name without blaming. That should have been enough drama. It wasn't. On a Tuesday that had done nothing to deserve it, a man rang my bell and introduced himself with the name I had trained myself not to say. Stefan. Vera's father. He had the same eyebrows my daughter wears when she doubts a thing. He had a paper envelope with corners going soft. He had a look that lives between apology and convenience. May I? He asked, nodding toward my kitchen. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. He did not sit. I heard about the wedding, he said. It was hard to keep it from you with the entire city telling each other everything, I said. What do you want? To give you this. He held out the envelope. I did not take it. And to say I was a coward, he added. I chose the easy door and shut it behind me. Cowardice is not a new word, I said. But I appreciate its honesty. He placed the envelope on the table and slid it toward me with 2 fingers. Letters, he said. From when I tried to be a better man. I wrote them and never sent them. I thought Vera might someday want the evidence that I once tried, even if I failed. I let them sit on the table like a guest I didn't want to introduce. She will decide, I said. That's what adults do with wreckage. They decide what kind of art they can make from it. He nodded, awkward with humility, then left. I called Vera. You should know your father brought letters, I said. There was a long inhale. I thought he might, she said. Ivana's cousin is neighbors with him. She hinted he might reach out. I told her it was not her business. She acted like matchmaking history is a hobby. Will you read them? I don't know, she said, and then, will you read them first? No, I said. They're not mine. She came over that evening, and we sat at the same kitchen table that had hosted so much arithmetic and so many announcements. She opened the envelope and read 3 letters silently. Her face did not shift. Finally, she spoke. He says he watched me from a distance, she said. He lists things I did that he could only know from gossip. He apologizes for not being a man. He says he loved me in his way. She looked at me. What do you want me to do with this? Nothing that hurts you, I said. If you respond, do it to keep your own house clean, not to tidy his. She folded the letters and put them back. I thought I might need more pain to prove I was grown, she said. Turns out I don't. She slid the envelope into her bag. I'll keep them. As evidence. Not as a map. We went on. The re-engagement dinner, the one with blue shoes and cake without raisins, happened in my backyard with lights strung between the lilacs like bees suspended in good dreams. I made potato salad with too much dill because joy makes me reckless. The audit people came, the baker with a pie, the nurse with a plant she swore was unkillable, The youth pastor with a tie that still bore the anointing from last time. Ivana came with a tray of precise pastries and a neutrality I respected. Halfway through, I pulled out something else. The yard sale that wasn't. I set up racks and tables with objects tagged like museum pieces. The dented blue kettle, boiled water through 6 winters, whistled 100 times when someone cried. The wool coat, saved thrice with patches, carried a girl through wind without complaining. The folding chair held 11-hour shift weight, free to a good home. People stopped, read, then set their fingers on the edges like witnesses. One older man bought the kettle for $1 and asked me to sign it with a marker. For my grandson, he said. So he knows what a whistle means. Vera walked among the tags like someone visiting a country they had mistakenly called small. She lifted a sweater with sleeves I'd darned a dozen times. The tag read, "Worn to first job interview, cuffs stuffed with courage." "Did you write these for me?" she asked. "For both of us," I said. "So we'd know what we own." She hugged me without worrying about witnesses. Repair had turned our family into people who hugged even when there were hands that might clap. A week later, during a vendor meeting at the wedding hall, the storm arrived. The forecast had been coy, the sky polite. Then lightning threaded the clouds and rain hammered the roof like an old debt collector. The hall manager wrung her hands. "The power's gone in half the block," she said. "We have generators for the kitchen, but the lights." "Candles," I said, even before the sentence finished walking out of her mouth. "Candles and more candles. And flashlights for the elderly. We will not cancel a promise, because the sky has opinions." We raided drawers and basements. The bakery lady brought votives wrapped in tulle from a shower that had never happened. The youth pastor produced lanterns like a magician with a benevolent kink. The fabric store ladies donated yards of white organza we draped over strings of battery lights, turning the room into a gentle galaxy. Ivana arrived with battery-powered pillars that looked real enough to fool God. We rehearsed by candlelight and practiced speaking vows loudly. Vera chose to walk alone down the first half of the aisle and then look for me. "Because you taught me to walk," she said, "and also to look back." The power returned the morning of the wedding. Of course it did. But we kept the candles. Beauty born of necessity should be allowed to stay when the emergency ends. On the day, the church smelled like lilies and rain that had at last made peace. I wore a dress the color of early morning and put a shawl in my purse, because one never knows when air conditioning will mistake itself for weather. I tucked a small note into the bag, in case language abandoned me later. Vera walked, stopped halfway, turned. Her chin lifted. Those eyebrows. That look that had been mine once and then hers. She reached for me, and I went to her. We walked together the rest of the way. Mark took her hand, then mine, and squeezed both as if we were one thing he intended to keep. The ceremony was modest and large all at once. Vows like stitches, small, strong, placed steadily. When they said "I do," you could feel the room tilt toward the future and settle there. At the reception, in a hall lit like a promise, Vera took the microphone and told our story. The audit, the letters, the yard sale that was a museum and a confession. She pulled the violin receipt from her bouquet and read the pencil note about love being countable and also not. People laughed, cried, laughed again. She turned to me. "I accused you of not loving me," she said. "I forgive myself for the sentence, but not the harm. I will spend the rest of my life saying the words out loud so no one has to guess. To anyone who thinks love is small because it doesn't post, learn from us. Sometimes it's the biggest thing. And to anyone who thinks love is only duty, learn this too. Make a little spectacle, write it down." The DJ, either psychic or lucky, played my mother's potato scrubbing song. We danced. Not gracefully. Honestly. Mark cut in and apologized every time he led until I told him to stop saying sorry like it was choreography. The youth pastor spilled coffee again and declared it a tradition. The nurse taught a line dance that looked like organized stumbling. Mrs. Cormack sat with her hat at a heroic tilt and cried into a napkin like she was trying to water a future. Late in the night, Vera and I stepped into the cool dark outside. The moon was patient above us. We leaned against the brick. "I'm still angry at empty chairs," she said. I'm still angry my overtime was invisible, I said. We nodded. The newest allowed both. Thank you, she said finally. And I'm sorry. She kissed my palm like she used to and laughed at herself for doing it, which made it perfect. After they drove away with a ribbon trailing behind them like a scribble, I stayed to help the woman who cleans the hall at the end of every party. We boxed cake for her to take home to her grandchildren. I have always believed that if joy shows up in sheet cake, it is rude not to send it away in slices. At home, I set my shoes by the door and hung my shawl on the chair for whoever needed it next. I wrote one last letter for the box. Today you married a good man. Today you saw me. Today I saw you. We said the words out loud so the words could do some carrying. Then I swept the kitchen. There was still a little sugar under the stove from the day the bag burst. I taped a damp paper towel to a yardstick and ran it along the baseboard until it came back clean. Even the old sweetness had been accounted for. In the morning, a text, a picture of blue shoes kicked into a happy heap. Come over, Mama. I put on a sweater even though the day promised sun. I made 2 sandwiches. I locked the door and went. Part 2, the lesson that took. You'd think a wedding is an ending. It is only a seam. After the party, life calls you back to the sink. That is not sad. That is where the shine goes to live. The week after the wedding, we met for tea with Ivana. She had opinions about the honeymoon, where, how long, whether the sun was good for skin at 31. I had opinions about the pantry. We traded politely. Midway through, she surprised me. I misjudged you, she said, like someone trying on a smaller shoe. I mistook your quiet for absence. I value appearances more than I should. I am trying to pick a wiser audience. Appearances have kept many people safe and many others lonely, I said. She nodded. If I overstep again, tell me before you set the table in a church basement. I will, I said, smiling despite myself. Vera and Mark returned from a small trip to the lakes, where they did nothing remarkable and were very satisfied by it. When they got home, there was a yellow slip from the post office, a package. It was from Stefan. I braced quietly. Inside was a notebook and one photograph. The notebook held notes he'd written the year Vera turned 6. The photograph was of him standing on a street corner, too far away to be personal, holding a soda can. On the back he'd written, "Saw you go by once. You looked happy." I decided not to interrupt. Vera laughed without joy. I'm going to stop allowing him to push the bruise, she said, and handed me the picture. This belongs in the yard sale museum under a sign that says, "Attempts insufficient." We did not reply. We were done curating pain that didn't fit our home. Instead, we curated a future. We picked a monthly Sunday where nobody could overbook us. We called it our standing room. We rotated between my kitchen and theirs. Sometimes we invited others, the baker, the nurse, the youth pastor, even Ivana when we were feeling brave. We cooked things that were forgiving if you forgot to stir them. We ate slowly and with both hands. We told each other where we had been wrong that month and what we'd learned. We said thank you for specific items, the text that arrived at the exact moment a heart sagged, the ride, the shared silence, the time one of us remembered the other's dentist appointment existed. On one of those Sundays, Vera asked me something she had never asked. What did you want, she said, aside from me? I almost said nothing. Mothers of my generation were trained to answer you. Only you. But that is not the truth, and I have retired from lying to make other people feel less indebted. I wanted to write a little food column in the neighborhood paper, I said. I wanted to teach a mending class where people brought more than fabric to repair. She blinked, then smiled slowly. Then do it, she said. I am almost 70. You are almost 70 and can thread a needle in a power outage, she said. Do it. So I did. The column was called Leftovers That Earn Their Keep. The class met on Wednesday evenings in the church basement. We called it Mend and Tell. People brought torn knees and the kind of stories that rip when you kneel in them. We sat in a circle with good light. We stitched. We spoke. We put patches over the places that wore out first. We did not apologize for the evidence of use. We learned to love what holds. Vera attended the first class and brought a sweater not because it needed mending but because we did. She told the group, carefully and without heroics, about the engagement dinner, The audit, the yard sale. A young man wiped his eyes and said he had accused his father of getting love wrong. An older woman laughed like a neck cracking into place and said she had accused her daughter of being dramatic when feelings were just a sign language she didn't know yet. We all left with neater stitches and hearts less likely to gape. The church custodian asked if we'd please put the chairs back exactly as we found them. We did. Repair is meticulous. Later, Mark suggested we turn my mending class into a tiny fundraiser for the clinic. "You're already fixing things," he said. "Let the fixing pay for bandages." We charged $5 if you could spare it and a story if you couldn't. Stories turned out to be legal tender. The clinic got a new blood pressure cuff out of them. I watched my daughter count the cash with the serious face she gets when money is about to become care. I watched her make calls I used to make, about budgets, about emergencies, about what can wait and what cannot. The circle had closed without us noticing, not like a door but like arms. On the anniversary of the engagement that wasn't, I woke to a knock. Vera stood on my porch with blue shoes in one hand and a brown paper bag in the other. "What's in the bag?" I asked. "Sugar," she said, smiling. "Let's spill some and clean it up together." Just for accuracy. We did. It fell like white rain again. We bent with the same broom. There is a kind of holiness in practiced movements that require no negotiation. "We should teach this," she said. How to argue without leaving the room. How to apologize without making the other person take care of you. How to audit love without turning it into debt. "We are teaching it," I said. "With cabbage rolls and index cards and the hem of your dress." She kissed my cheek. "Come over, Mama," she said, as if it were an eternal refrain. "There's soup." I put on a sweater, even though the day was already warm. Old habits. Useful ones. I locked the door behind me and went. Part 3. The part 1 almost left out. There is something I almost didn't tell you because we already had our ending. But neat endings can make other people feel like their mess means they failed. So, after the wedding, we had a month where everything we had learned was tested like a new seam under a heavy shoulder bag. It began with a rumor. Someone told someone that the church basement audit had been a stunt. Someone said I'd staged stories like a play. Someone said Vera cried for attention, not revelation. The rumor arrived at Ivana's Pilates class and then at a salon owned by a woman who knew the baker's cousin. It came to rest like a moth on Vera's shoulder one Tuesday. She called me. "I want to set the city on fire," she said. "We'll just light our corner," I said. We invited the loudest rumormongers to a mend and tell evening. We offered tea and cookies. We set extra needles on the table because hands that mend have less time for mischief. We told the story again, but this time we asked those who had watched to tell it. The nurse spoke. The youth pastor spoke. The man with the signed kettle spoke. A college student said she had called her mother that night and apologized for weaponizing absence. The rumor deflated like a bad cake. It did not disappear because rumors never do, they just lose their footing. We did not post anything. We did not clap for ourselves. We folded chairs. We turned off the lights. We went home. 2 weeks later, the clinic called. A small abnormality on a test. "Nothing to panic over," they said, which is what people say when they don't want to panic you while they panic a little themselves. I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a list with 2 columns, if benign and if not. I put soup and sweaters in both. I waited for the call. Vera arrived without knocking. She sat. She took out the index cards. "All right," she said, professional as a paramedic. Public version. I will attend the follow-up. Quiet version. I will sleep on your couch the night before. I will bring my ridiculous silk sleep mask because it makes you laugh. I will learn to make the tea exactly the way you like it. I will not Google things after you go to bed. I will not make you comfort me while we wait. I breathed like a person who had invented breath. "Okay," I said. It was fine. The second test was clean as a new plate. We took our fear for a walk around the block and then sent it to the store for milk and did not give it the long list. The day the clinic cleared me, I bought a cake with raisins by accident. I ate it anyway. It tasted like relief pretending to be a fruit. Vera laughed and ate 2 slices on purpose. "Evidence," she said, and licked her fork. "That we can survive a few bad ingredients." That weekend, we held a mend and tell focused on people who wanted to repair holidays that had been broken by grief or pettiness or the wrong guest list. We called it After the Fire, Bring Plates. People brought stories and paper napkins. We passed around a pen for writing down new rituals. We invented one where you pour a little water into a houseplant for someone who can't attend. We invented another where you write the name of the person you can't forgive on a card and fold it in half so only you can read it, then tuck it under the table leg that wobbles and notice how steadier everything feels. We did not promise miracles. We promised sturdier tables. When we closed up the church basement, the custodian stopped me. "You know, your audit probably saved us 3 divorces," he said. "And 1 mother-daughter implosion I could see coming from 2 parishes over." "I'll put that in the column," I said, and then actually didn't, because some things live better unprinted. On the way home, Vera threaded her arm through mine. "Do you ever get tired of being the adult?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "But being a child is harder if you're the wrong age for it." We reached my door. The lights in my kitchen were the color of a recipe that's finally been mastered. I reached into the closet for a sweater, out of habit, then left it hanging. The night didn't need one. "Tomorrow?" she asked. "Tomorrow," I said. She walked away with her blue shoes in her hand to keep from waking the neighbors. I stood and watched until she turned the corner, then went inside and put on the kettle that never learned to whistle, only to hum. There. You've seen the stitching, both tidy and not. You've seen the receipts and the notes and the days that don't care whether anyone is watching. If you need a summary, I'll give you the only one that matters. When the bag of sugar splits, hold the broom together. When the lights go out, keep the candles. When the rumor comes, pass the needles. When the test is pending, put soup on both lists. When the aisle is long, walk the first half alone and then look back. When love looks small, remember it kept the roof from leaking. When you get the chance, dance, even if your shoes are blue and your steps are made of laughter. And if you ever forget...
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video, like and subscribe. Bye bye!